Lawyers of Reddit, what is the most outrageous case someone has asked you to take? Had a case where a man refused to pay rent because his apartment smelled terrible and was making him sick. His landlord tried to evict him. A few days after taking the case and before his first hearing, the ceiling in his bathroom collapsed. Turns out some plumbing wasn't connected and his ceiling walls had been filling with poop for months. The landlord settled pretty quickly after that. Holy frick, that's disgusting. A woman called saying that she had a product liability suit involving animal crackers she gave to her daughter. I was thinking it was going to be something to do with food poisoning and keep listening. She explained that when she looked at the crackers, it looked like the monkey was holding its dong. It was a banana. This woman was mortified and ashamed. She said she told all her co-workers and they were very shocked and uncomfortable. I wanted to tell her she was nuts and that they were probably freaked out because you were talking about animal cracker dongs. I got a call from a client I had represented in the past, wanting me to help out her son. He and his girlfriend wanted to get married, but she was under 18, so she needed permission from her parents, and they wouldn't give permission. We chatted about it for a while and then she told me it was an urgent matter, because the girl was pregnant. I said, wait, how old did you say she was? Mom said 14. I said, and how old is your son? Mom said 20. I said, you need to immediately hire a criminal defense lawyer to help you with this. And then I had to explain to her why her son had a bigger problem than not being able to get married. A prospective client once called me to ask if I did personal injury cases because she felt a fall coming on. I remember a guy called me and wanted to take action against the post office. He had received a letter from them saying that they would no longer deliver packages to him as he was never appropriately dressed when he opened the door to accept them. I remember being nervous about asking him to elaborate. My family member sued me for taking down their website. I created the website. I hosted the website. I had no problem doing it since they were family and it ran on my server. Unfortunately, they got too much traffic. They started being very hostile to my parents. I took down their site. I sent them a letter about how families should treat one another with a passworded zip of all their files. The password was at the bottom of the letter, so they had to read it to receive it. Got sued for 6 figures. They were pulling in at most $300 a month. They said that I did irreparable damage to their site and that they couldn't get the site online because it was impossible. In court, they brought the whole database printed out. When they showed it to me on the stand, I laughed because I told the judge, that's all the information that they said they couldn't receive or open. All the counts were in my favor. Best part was prior to our court session, my lawyer suggested highly that we settle out of court. I offered $10,000. They didn't take it. After they lost, their lawyer asked if we could just settle on the amount from settlement. My lawyer told them to frick off. It was glorious. As a public defender, I defended a grown man accused of stealing magic cards from Walmart. There was an hour-long security video meticulously showing, from dozens of angles, that he was picking up sets of cards, unwrapping them and discarding the wrappers around the store. He insisted that he was innocent and we actually went to a jury trial instead of securing a plea deal. It took the jury 8 minutes to convict him and the judge laid into my client telling him that he was the worst thief he had ever seen. I forgot the best part. At one point in the trial I had to spend 45 minutes explaining to the judge what magic cards are. He couldn't understand why anyone needed more than one deck. First case out of law school: 3-way custody battle between a dad who was in and out of jail on drug charges, mom who was an escort, and grandfather who had a library of CP on his phone. Our client, mom, was also paying her lawyer by trading services. Mom ended up winning custody on the condition she stopped being an escort. I have to both, I will admit, are friends rather than myself. The first case is the case of the donkey fricker. A friend had to try and defend a bloke who got caught 3 times being intimate with a donkey on a local farm. The guy kept on getting caught because he had to take a stepladder with him. And every time it happened, the farmer spotted the ladder bouncing up and down behind the fence every time the guy walked to the barn. The barrister in this case had defended the IRA in the past and his words were bloody long step away from the IRA but the same amount of money. The defendant didn't have a case and was completely open about his bestiality in open court. No shame whatsoever supposedly. The second is actually a friend of mine who is a magistrate. Basically volunteers from the community who act as judges in smaller cases prior to Crown Court. A guy appeared before magistrates, where I think he had attacked a police officer. They first watched a video of the event with the guy shouting all sorts of obscenities at the police. He then, when asked to answer for his crime, started to pretend to speak another language. His solicitor just said, "Please forgive my client, he does speak English. However, he is an idiot." After this blatant lie of trying to speak a foreign language which was complete and utter nonsense, he then started to pretend that he was deaf and dumb, thus started to mimic what he thought was sign language, pointing at his mouth and shaking his head. His solicitor again, "Please forgive my client, he is not deaf and dumb, he is just stupid." My friend who was heading up the magistrates board then said to the defendant, "Please take a seat, Mr. X." He responds, "Yeah, no problem, love." Many years ago when I was still a trainee solicitor, my then mentor wanted me to see a client on his behalf. He didn't give me any details other than he was a new client and I was to take initial instructions. Criminal law BTW. So there I am, keen but wet behind the ears, when this very large man comes into my small office and starts to inquire about the legal age of consent. 16 in my country. He then tells me the reason is he wants to start producing P and wants to be sure about the law. Well then that changes the answer as it is a different question. 18 in my country. He gets upset and animated saying how he wanted to produce P that had much younger girls in it. 14ish. I explain the legal implications of this and how he would find himself in jail in very little time. He then goes on to his next idea, which is he wants to produce P for animals. Not bestiality or anything like that. Videos of two animals making love and he wants to retail it to domestic pets. At this point my mentor had overheard some if not all of the consultation. Without saying a word he walks into my office, up to my desk. I kept a picture of my family dog on my desk. He takes the picture of my dog off my desk and leaves the room. It was the strangest consultation I have ever had to this day. Nice to think your mentor was looking out for your pooch. I imagine this being the equivalent of covering a child's ears when parents are using swear words. There's a lot of them. I've been asked to evict a ghost. I actually did that one. I regularly get phone calls promising to make me a millionaire if I'll sue the police. There's the completely guilty sex offender sitting in jail who wanted me to handle his appeal under circumstances that would have resulted in him being released, then immediately charged and convicted of a more serious crime. So many. The day after President Obama won the election in 2008, I had a potential client cold call for a claim of copyright infringement. He wanted to sue then President-elect Obama for having 7 US flags on the podium during his acceptance speech. The potential client claimed he had copyrighted the use of 7 flags on a stage for presentations. This is ridiculous and would never have been allowed a registration. But he didn't know that. Likely the potential client was high, drunk, or a scammer. My guess is he wanted to file a lawsuit, then sit down in a boardroom during pre-trial motions and try to settle for a nominal sum. He would get a few thousand, minus lawyer fees, and go away. Unfortunately, the potential client didn't understand 1. You need a copyright registration before you file a lawsuit. 2. You would never get a registration for having 7 flags in a backdrop of a stage. 3. That he was going to get nothing from then President-elect Obama because he would have had a firecracker team of lawyers at his avail. And 4. Homie, don't play that. I asked him for a registration number so I could verify details and he hung up on me. Second most outrageous case was a potential client wanted to protect copyright, maybe patent, a Wii sex game that used the Wii controller and Wii Fit. I wanted to take it, but was voted down by the firm. When I told the inventor this, he said, in a resigned voice, "Third time that happened." I really felt bad for that inventor but put him on to another of my friends who was a solo IP lawyer. Family law attorney here. I just had a custody case go back to court over eyeglasses. My client didn't like the glasses her ex bought the kid. So stupid. I want to go back to criminal defense. Gang homicide cases had nicer people to deal with than family law. I recall that the lawyer whom I first did work experience under described family law as the single most miserable godforsaken profession that has ever existed upon this earth. When I was a trainee solicitor, my principal had a guy come in who spoke almost exclusively in quotes from US presidents. This was a specialist law firm in a very English town, and the dude was about as English as it's possible to be. Tweed suit with leather elbow patches English. He wasn't initially anything to do with me, but half an hour into the initial meeting my principal wandered into my office totally exasperated, which I'd never seen before, and she said, paraphrasing here, "Crow eggs, you're patient man. Find out what this crazy loon actually wants. It'll be a good first case evaluation for you to handle by yourself." I spent 2 hours listening to him talk. Literally every second sentence began with "as Woodrow Wilson once said," or "as Grover Cleveland once said." He even managed to quote Taft. I mean, even the craziest of crazy doesn't quote Taft. It's Taft for Christ's sake. Anyway, after 2 hours I explained how much the meeting was costing him even though I was just a trainee, and he visibly sagged and said, all blurted out like a naughty child, "I poured bleach on the roots of my neighbor's tree and it fell into my greenhouse. Can you make him pay for the repairs?" I gently explained why that wouldn't work, and he cried. So I called the loveliest secretary in the firm who made him a cup of tea and sat with him until he went home. Lawyer in a small town here. I mostly do estate planning, probate, old people stuff, etc. I have a client that sued his ex-wife for not selling the house after the divorce as she was supposed to. Judge held her in contempt and asked what he wanted my client to do, and he had her thrown in jail. They are both nearly 80 years old. The client also has something valuable buried on his property for his grandchildren after he dies. I have a sealed letter in my desk that he pays me a goodly sum each month to hold and give to his grandson when the old man dies. I had a potential client come in and say that he wanted to sue his uncle for murder. Setting aside the fact that you can't sue someone for murder, I asked him who did his uncle murder. He replied me. I turned the case down. During law school, I was a member of a legal clinic. We represented low-income individuals. Under the supervision of a licensed attorney professor, we handled family law issues, but would try to point clients in the right direction if we could not personally help them. One man came in and stated that he wanted to sue Best Buy, which is not uncommon, but why he wanted to sue Best Buy was different. See, this man said he purchased a refurbished computer from Best Buy for his daughter as a Christmas present. Best Buy had neglected to remove the previous owner's password screen, and thus, this man and his daughter were unable to access the computer until they took it back to Best Buy, which was understandably closed on Christmas Day. This, he said, caused his 12-year-old daughter to begin to question the very existence of Santa Claus. He and his daughter then argued the rest of the day, until finally he admitted to her that there was, spoiler alert, no Santa Claus. His words were, "Seeing your daughter lose faith in Santa ruined all Christmases to come." He also claimed that now his daughter was a real bee since she had stopped believing in Santa Claus. What was more interesting is the amount of damages he requested. He stated he believed that Best Buy owed him at least $25 million because Christmas was ruined. His daughter will never believe in Santa again, and now he has to deal with her being a real bee. I did not believe he had any type of recourse against Best Buy for inadvertently demolishing his daughter's belief in Santa, but even if I did, our clinic could not help him. I informed him that we only handled family law issues, and he should call the local bar association's lawyer referral service. He stated the bar association already told him they would not take his case. Then he proceeded to ask if I had children. I told him I did not. Then he proceeded to wish that all my future kids had their belief in Santa Claus ruined. He stated he would not help me if that happened. He then told me to frick off and left. The whole time I was wondering how this guy's daughter believed in Santa Claus till age 12. Had a fellow call my office and tell me he wanted our firm to handle negotiations with some of the big companies in the vinyl siding industry. I figured he had some new product that he wanted to sell or license, but no. When he came in, he disclosed that he had discovered a defect in the vinyl siding and actually wanted us to demand a large sum of money from these companies, or else he was going to disclose this defect to the news. Turns out he was a day laborer who had just recently been assigned to a construction project and discovered that you can cut vinyl house siding with a sharp knife. which is the way it is actually cut on site to be installed. The siding is supposed to be installed over a plywood backing, but his boss had told him to skip putting up the backing panels to save money. He felt that homeowners were in danger because, without the wood backing, criminals could use this knowledge to enter people's houses, and he felt it was his solemn duty to report this to the public. That is, unless the vinyl siding companies were to cough up a bunch of cash. Basically, his employer was scamming customers, and he felt that justified his extortion of the manufacturers and wanted us to legitimize his efforts to extort money from this industry. It was a little uncomfortable to point out that, in fact, he and his boss were the criminals, and that he really didn't have a case. I do firearms law, and this is one that happens about every 3 months. So, I have this invention, and I want you to write a legal opinion confirming that it is legal. See, it is designed to protect from lead exposure when you go shooting. Lead is a serious health risk. Does this invention involve a tube that fits on the end of your gun and contains a series of baffles to capture the vented gases? Yes, sir, you have invented the suppressor, which is a prohibited device here in Canada. While working at a plaintiff's employment firm, 2 memorable consults came in. 1. Guy gets fired for being late too much, wants to sue for discrimination because he has a sugar addiction and needs to stop at 7-11 for a big gulp before his shift begins. As a result, he usually ends up missing the bus. 2. A woman comes in, she was a bus driver and was terminated during her probationary period. She had 3 accidents in 6 weeks. She wants to sue for discrimination because she has anxiety and a therapy rabbit, all the while sitting at the conference room table petting the therapy bunny. My parents are both attorneys. Most recently, their bat-crap crazy neighbor asked my dad to serve as his attorney in a slip-and-fall suit against my parents. He had come over unannounced and uninvited at 6 AM on a snowy morning and fell down our driveway. My dad was the one who helped him up and called the ambulance on his behalf. The next day, crazy neighbor dropped off legal documents in my parents' mailbox for my dad to look over to see if he had a case against my dad. And this is why I hate people. I would have exerted all my lawyer skills to find some miserable loophole or precedent allowing me to take the case, and I would press my client to sue for attorney's fees. Years ago, I had someone ask me, informally, whether he should sue the Jerry Springer show because they turned his family down as guests. Yeah, out of there real quick. Law librarian in a big law school. Years ago, pre-internet everywhere, a man used to call the ref desk all the time with odd questions about currency and laws related to it. He claims he is an author and is writing a book about how aliens are going to come to Earth and take over by manipulating our currency system. He has all kinds of questions about counterfeiting money, shows up in person one day and looks like something out of Central Casting, odd-fitting green suit, grey hair that is wild and looks like it has not been combed since Nixon was in power, glasses, and an agitated demeanor. I spent an entire afternoon explaining why there is no information on how to counterfeit money, why I cannot get a hold of someone in the RCMP to work with him on the subject, and no, you cannot sue the government of Canada, the RCMP, the Bank of Canada and anyone else who regulates Canadian currency for the secrets to good counterfeit money. The law library is often the first stop for those on their way to determining whether they have a legal action, and think so no matter what they find out. The uninformed, the unhappy, those with an axe to grind, a partner to screw over, we often hear it first. Like the girl who wanted to know if there was a bigamy section in the Stray Animals Act. Yup, her dog apparently was caught in a compromising situation. And, as a good reference librarian, we never laugh at the question. We save that for later in the back room. I worked on a custody dispute between a mother and grandmother, where both sides were absolutely outraged by the other's claims. The mother was very upset that she was alleged to have been a stripper. I was a prostitute, but I was never a stripper. The grandmother in return was furious that she was alleged to have 21 cats in her 2-bedroom apartment. We only have 17 cats. How dare she flat out lie and say that we have 21 cats. The child ended up living with the father in a different state. Kid dodged 2 bullets. You've been spotted by the doggo of studying. Like this video for good grades for the next 2 years. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, Have a great day, you magnificent people.